ask it live, so to speak. Can everybody see my screen? Great, thanks for the thumbs up, Gil. Okay, so I'm coming down, blah de blah blah blah. There's me and Rob. There's the dates. I think you all know you're going to contact Vicky, and she's got all the information there. If you are interested in finding out more. But really, what I wanted to do tonight, like I said, just quickly, hopefully I won't go too much over the hour. I'm not very good at keeping to time, but I've hopefully going to kick the new year off well. I wanted to just give you an idea of who I was. Some of you know, some of you don't know, and just the approach that I take to scent work, because it is quite a little bit different, I find, than what people are generally used to. So really quickly, and this is only important because I think when you give someone your time and you give someone your money, to learn from, I think it's really important to know where they come from. And every single one of us has biases. We can't get away from that. So you'll get a bit of an idea maybe of what my bias is here. So I've been teaching scent work specific since 2013 up here, well, Australia-wide, because Vicky's one too. Debbie's here as well. I'm a foundational judge. Before that, though, I had many years as a professional animal trainer, predominantly working in zoos and aquarium around the world, and also in the film world. So I actually got into scent work, which was all that we had back then was nose work, but we know that the terms we can use interchangeably. I actually got into scent work after I had finished a 2-year run of a musical with 2 chihuahuas. And they were very young at the time. They were actually 8 months old when we opened the musical. Amazing little dogs, still here. And I remember thinking when that finished up, holy crap, these dogs have had just such an amazingly enriched life for the first couple of years of their lives. They're going to just make me tear my hair out if I don't find something for them to do. You know, they're going to find those jobs that you never want any chihuahua to have, like bark, bark, bark incessantly. So that's where I found scent work, or like I said, nose work. But I did have a huge lot of experience training animals beforehand. My background is in applied behavior analysis. So the fancy term for the scientific study of learning and training, I guess, if we want to call it that. So I come at training, whether I'm training a seal or whether I'm giving advice to someone who's working, trying to get a blood draw from a parrot, or someone who's wanting to fix up their stuff in scent work. I come at it from a very, I guess, analytical sort of perspective. And because of the experience that I've had, especially when we talk about animals like little birds and big sea lions, and my understanding about how behaviors build, how they maintain, and how they die in this beautiful planet of ours, my observation and analysis, I say, are my superpowers. I can analyze stuff in my sleep, I think, sometimes, and that's, I guess, what you expect when someone's been doing something, anything, for the amount of time that I've been doing this. So my lens is definitely through that applied behavior analysis. You can see Spazzy there, one of the chihuahuas that I just spoke about. He's standing on top of some of my favorite learning texts from like university and alike. So like I said, I come at it from very much that perspective. And even if you don't know anything, it's like, oh my God, they're words that are so big and Peter must be so smart. Peter's not. Peter's just really motivated to learn shit. This is the science that we base all of our dog training on, whether you know it or not. And the really important thing for me to get across to us all tonight, and I always have to be reminded of it too, is that scent work, when we're training scent work, when we're training our dogs to go out there and find that hide and tell us all about it, it's just dog training. And it kind of is like, well, that's a no-brainer, Peter, but it kind of isn't. When you stand back and look at the way a lot of people approach scent work training, it sort of makes me scratch my head. So we're going to look at that just in this hour so that we can get a bit more clarity, even if you're not coming and joining us when I'm down there, so that you can have a bit more clarity moving forward with your own training. So the same rules apply, whether we're training agility or whether we're training our dog to go to its bed, because otherwise it's going to jump over every guest that comes through the door. The same rules are going to apply. And the rules, in a nutshell, are that criteria matters. And we're going to go through these just a little bit. Behavior chains need to be broken down into learnable pieces. You'll understand what a behavior chain is by the end of this, if you don't already. It's just a whole lot of little behaviors that go together to build or create one big behavior. That'll do for now. Cues are still prompting behavior every step of the way. Oftentimes in scent work, though, we think of the scent or the search cue, go find it, search, whatever it happens to be, as the only cue there is in town in the scent work game. And it's just not true at all. There's cues that are going, that are cueing the dog, that are prompting the dog to perform specific behaviors, all through that search. And again, you'll be clear on that in a minute. Reinforcement still works its power. Reinforcement strengthens behavior. If I was ever going to have a tattoo, it'll probably be that tattooed somewhere, so I never forgot it like I would. But the same as cues, reinforcement is in there, percolating away in this behavior chain, and I might introduce you to some different ways of looking at that and seeing that tonight. And this is my question. I scratch my head. There's some amazing trainers out there who have done a lot of training in other disciplines, who have got into scent work. And it often seems to me that all of their knowledge and their thinking and their approach about training seems to go out the window when it comes to scent work. So many trainers, I say, they do scent work like these laws of learning no longer matter. And hopefully I'll remind us all that they do tonight. So in my book, proper training has to be based on our decisions that are going to build in our beautiful dogs clarity. That's what it is that we're asking them to do. And obviously motivation, giving them a reason, just admitting someone, a reason, a desire, a drive to get out there and want to do it. So those are my two, you can see they're bricks. They're my foundational bricks that I build everything else on. So my decisions in training, whether I'm working with a team that's just started or whether I'm working with, I had a master's / ultimate client today who's got a little bit of mud and murkiness going on. And we went right back to these foundations. We want clarity and we got motivation, because if we've got those things, if the dog is clear in what they're being asked to do and they're damn sure motivated to do it, then we should have no problem. Odor availability and all that stuff that is out of our control to the side, we should have no problem with a dog that does their very, very best in a trial for us. So, criteria, just so we're on the same page, criteria for me is what tells us when we're starting out in a training journey, or if we're in the middle of it and it might be going a bit irky, the dog's not performing maybe the way that we want them or need them to perform. So criteria tells me exactly what I am training, where I'm going. It's kind of like a journey. I know where I want to end up if I know, if I can describe, if I can have a criteria in my head about what that goal behavior looks like. So here's some examples. Criteria, good criteria should be really, really descriptive. So this is Robin's search criteria. And it says when cued, when I give him his cue is go find it. Robin's going to begin searching and remain focused on searching until he finds source odor or until I cue him to stop. Now, I could have made it even more anal by putting he's going to move out in a forward direction from me at pace and all of that kind of stuff. But all I really wanted to make sure that I had at its very base was that he remains focused on that searching until he finds source odor or until I cue him to stop. So that means that I don't accept him looking back at me. I don't accept him stopping and having a piss or at a tree. I don't accept him going and jumping all over Vicky, who just happens to be his judge, and then getting back into the search. If I've given him the cue to search, I expect to see that focus search behavior. So that gives me a goal. So I know now if I start to see in his training anything that doesn't look like that, oh, I'm sort of maybe going down a route in my training that I don't want. So that's his search behavior criteria. Then was his very first alert behavior criteria when he was a baby. It's changed a little bit, but again, you get the idea. I've got this dog and I want an alert behavior. Well, what does that look like? For me, I said, okay, on pinpointing source, Robin is going to get his nose as close as possible to source and then sit and stare. The sit's gone out the window. Don't do that anymore. In the direction of source, no matter what I am doing or no matter where I am. And he's going to hold that position until he's released. So again, I'm not saying that this needs to be everybody's alert behavior criteria. I'm just saying everybody needs specific criteria, if only for those two parts of the search. Because if nothing else, we know that we want behavior that is focused and attentive and driven searching, and we want behavior that is alert behavior at source. Now, if it was that simple, it was just searching and finding odor, then we might not need to be here tonight, but there's heaps of other stuff as we go up the levels, right? That these bastard judges add in that mean that it makes us harder and harder and more complex. So just so you understand, when I'm talking about having criteria, I'm not just talking about the base stuff, the overall stuff like searching and alerting in this case. When I started introducing formal distractors to Robin, specifically food distractors, I went back and I made myself another criteria. So within that search, I want to be able to know that I've trained Robin to this level if he hits a food distractor. So my criteria for my dogs is to have the skill to choose to leave the food distractor without my help, spending no more than 3 seconds investigating it with their nose. So it's really important to me. And again, I'm not saying this has to be yours. I'm just saying this is what good training is. First and foremost, before you even whack some food in your treat pouch, heading on out there, sitting down and thinking, okay, well, what do I want this to look like? What do I want the end goal to look like? And then a good trainer will say, and what do I want to get out of this specific training session? So for me, it was really, really important that Robin learned that in his training, my job was to teach him that when he was searching, if he came across food, he was to leave it without me pulling him away. It's not my job. It's not my job to tell him that to move away from food in a search. My job is to train him to know that. I don't want to be in a search and have to question whether my dog is on food odor or on target odor. I want to do the training so that he is clear, so that I am clear when we're in a trial. I know that if he's had a little sniff and moved off, then we're probably looking at a food distractor. Does that make sense? If it doesn't, we're going on anyway. I'll see you at the questions. So there's my criteria in a couple of different areas of scent work. And obviously training is how we get there. So we've got the goal now. I see the picture. Training is how we get there. But the trouble is that scent work is ridiculously complex. You know, I've done agility. I've worked animals on film sets. I've trained condors to have eye drops. Like I've done a lot of stuff out there. Scent work is an incredibly challenging and complex behavior or behavior chain, as we'll talk about in a bit, to train. And what that means is that the more complex the behavior, the easier it is to confuse our dogs. And in scent work, it's really easy to confuse them and actually not know that they're confused. So it starts to make our job even harder. Confusion always reduces clarity. Every single one of us can think of a situation where we've been asked to do something and the instructions weren't quite right. And we were like, I'm not really sure. As soon as our clarity is reduced, then our confidence goes down. I'm not sure I want to even try this to do this because I'm not sure I understand what actually I'm supposed to do. So lack of clarity reduces the confidence. Lack of confidence is inevitably going to reduce success. And we all need to look at different ways that we define success in scent work, especially at a trial, because sometimes your dog will have worked their ass off and done the most amazing job, and you will not get a quali card. And one of my soapbox things at the moment is helping people understand that that is a brilliant dog, that you've just had an amazing trial experience, but you've walked away without a quali card. They're just the rules of ANKC scent work, or, you know, ACSW scent work. But sometimes you're going to have a day where your dog just shines and performs brilliantly, but doesn't pass. And those are the times where you really want to make sure that you have an alternate way of looking at success. One of the things with my online guys that we often do is, if they're going to a trial, we've got a little template that is a certificate. And one of the mind things that we do is I say to them, okay, and I do it for myself. Okay, we've got a trial on Saturday. So Saturday morning, as I'm driving there, or maybe even Friday night, I am going to lie in bed and I'm not going to get nervous. And I'm going to go, okay, we might get a card tomorrow, we might not. But what are some other ways that I could pass this? What are some other ways where I would just be like on cloud nine and feeling like it was the most successful thing? And it might be, Peter, my dog did not return to one found hide, and we've been working on that. Oh my God, I can't believe it. It was such a smooth, that clarity for that has really built. Or it might be leaving food distractors. It might be doing an exterior search on grass and he didn't piss, you know. We've all got to pick our own that works for us as well. In training, often, and this is where I start to get a little bit ticky, in scent work training, often it seems that people just will throw out hides and they're just going to run their dogs until all the hides are found. And we call that training. That's not training in any way, shape, or form in my book. And I'll explain that in a minute. And as we go up in these levels and the things get more and more complex, oftentimes, and the dog's success rate goes down, oftentimes I find that people are putting the blame in all of the wrong places. They blame the judge. They blame odor availability. Well, there's no way. Well, why did she have sardines as the distractor? Blah, blah, blah. Whereas all of those things might be true. But we really need to put our emphasis and our blame, if you want to call it that, or the responsibility back on ourselves in our training. Because if we take the blame, we now have the power to improve things for our dog, improve their clarity, improve their success and their enjoyment in a trial situation. Okay, so training. What does good training for me look like in scent work? Well, the first thing it looks like is thinking about breaking the training down. So rather than going and setting out hides and just running it, I want to I might do that, but at least in that search, I'm going to be focused on either my search behavior or my alert behavior. And obviously underlying all of that is the value for target odor. That's where motivation comes from. And just an example of what often happens, I see happens and I hear happens, and I used to do a bit of this myself until I slapped myself around, is that we might set out some hides. I'm sure everyone has had this experience. We'll set out some hides and the dog, we realize sort of like not far into it that these are crappy hides. You know, I thought they'd be easier. I thought this one might be a little bit sort of up there. But man, this dog just is having a heap of trouble. Um, every single one of us pretty much will flog that horse till it's dead and until they've found all of the hides, no matter how they find the hides. So that's when we start to step in and start to build the belief that we have to get them into the corners and we have to take over. But the problem is that you hang them out, you wait for them to finally find, oh my God, yes, he's getting so close to that hide, thank God. And then he gets to the hide, he's just spent 3 minutes searching and you thought it was only going to be a 1 minute search and he's worked his little butt off. And he goes, oh God, here it is. And you decide that that's not a good enough alert. That's not a good enough alert. You're not close enough. You're not this enough. You're not that enough. You've now punished all of that hard searching work that that dog's done. So that's why always in my head, I'm thinking, what am I working on here? I'm not just working on one big thing. What am I working on? So I know that I don't inadvertently reduce motivation and clarity in some other area. So the scent work behavior chain. A search is what we call a behavior chain. It's simply scientific talk, and I'm sure many of you have heard the term. It's really common, even in our dog training world these days. But for us in applied behavior analysis, a behavior chain is a sequence of small behaviors that are linked together to perform a final bigger behavior. And there's lots of different kinds of behavior chain. A search behavior chain is one where there is, let's just say that from us, a cue at the beginning and then that finish at the end. But in between, there's some other stuff going on. I'll explain that in a minute. So I don't want you to look or think about search training, scent work training like that anymore. I want you to think about the fact that there are all of these little, can you see my cursor? Great. All of these little circles are actually my attempt to give you an understanding that there's lots of different behaviors going on. So you cue your dog to go search. That dog is probably going to at least have to take a couple of seconds or a couple of steps to get into odor. You know as well as I do that every now and again you're at the start line and you go, oh my God, my dog's in odor and this is going to be fantastic, and they just zoom out. But there's always going to be in a search, once you get past advanced, definitely, those what are called deserts where no odor is. So the first thing they really have to do is they've got to go find odor. Once they find odor, then the behavior is to follow odor. Then, if it all stays nice and clean, and a search never does, then they're going to follow that odor, and that's going to allow them to find source. They find it, they pinpoint it, hopefully their alert behavior happens, and they get their reinforcement from the handler. But here's a thing that I'll just explain. Let me try and do this. It always scares me when I bring up this. Is that going to work? Oh, yes, it is. So here's something to think about. We'll start here. When a dog is searching for odor, so he's going through that desert, he's got no odor molecules coming his way. He's like, man, it's out here somewhere. As soon as his nose gets a whiff of some kind of level of odor molecule, that odor molecule into his little nose has actually acted as a reinforcer for searching for odor. And this is where I said before, we've got cues and we've got reinforcers going on all throughout here and there, these big searches. So same kind of idea. You find odor, you start to follow odor. Getting close and finding source reinforces this following the odor behavior. So there's all sorts of information going on to the dog without you having to do or say anything. And that's the way that a behavior chain has to work. So I don't want you to think of it as a search as one big thing that's one big behavior anymore. At least start to realize that there's these little bits there that can be pulled out, and we'll talk about that in a minute, and can be looked at and trained separately. But each of these ones have to be strong. See the chain I've got there? That's saying a chain is as strong as its weakest link. That's what it is. Each of these behaviors have to be strong in and of themselves. If one is weak, if you've got a dog that doesn't drive to source, then you're going to have an issue, aren't you? You're going to be like, and he's not getting close enough. I'm going to get wares from those bastard judges and all of that kind of stuff. Subsequently, if your dog has a weakness in this bit here, searching for odor, and many dogs do, the whole chain is going to be not as strong as it could be. So each of those behaviors have to be nice and strong. So even just that concept, that bit of information, understanding that searching is not one big behavior. You shouldn't just throw out hides and ask your dog to go and search and basically not let them finish until they find all of them, no matter what. Just even thinking that shows us how easy it is for our dogs to learn the wrong things when we don't break down the training. And I'm going to give you some examples, don't worry. So what happens if we don't break it down? Here comes your examples. Well, confusion is going to start to reign. The client that I was working with this morning, who's had a real dip in her success rate up at Masters. She's trialing in Ultimate. She's got some Ultimate passes, but she can't quite crack the Masters exterior. And we were talking about clarity. She said, it's just a communication problem. I know it is. And I'm like, yeah, it will be. Basically, it was really easy to see that when she had, because she wanted to, get the dog and make sure that he'd cleared this area and that, and then because she's in Masters now, she doesn't know how many hides there are, so he might have found the 2 that are out there, but what do? We all go, oh, let's just go round again. Oh my God, did you check up here properly? Did you check down here properly? And what had happened very clearly to me, and once I explained it to her, it was very clear to her as well, that her dog had started to false alert in the absence of odor because it had had so many experiences where when she asked him to check in the corner, he had found her hide. And he's like, oh my God, you know this game better than me. Cheers. So now he's got this history of finding a hide when mum tells me to go into a corner or check the chair or whatever it is. And so now when she gestures to an area, oftentimes he false alerts because it's not become so much about the odor now, or the hide, I should say. It's become about mum's gesturing, and that's what works. So you've got to be really careful here. So that's what happens if we don't break it down and look at it. We start to get lots and lots of little bits of lack of clarity there. So the most common example that I see is, well, let's just go back a bit. We've talked about this already. I mentioned, and I'm sure you were all nodding because I don't know anybody that wants any other behaviors in their searching, in their searches when they're working. The only behaviors that we want during a search are searching behavior, and you can define that, build your criteria to whatever it looks like. But most of us will say we want our dogs to drive out from us and be focused until they find the hide, and then we want them to perform their alert behavior. Every single dog has to have an alert behavior that pinpoints. So there's 3 parts even to just an alert behavior. They need to pinpoint, they need to commit out to it. So no matter what you do, they need to stay there. So you know that they're like, it's here, this is it, come pay me, mama. And then the alert behavior itself that we often refer to, or the behavior that we often refer to as an alert behavior, the sit, the freeze, the look back, it doesn't matter what it is. That's sort of the least most important part, but it's the one we focus on. But we want and need searching behavior and an alert behavior that we can trust. So the most common thing that I see that gives me an idea that this dog has lost some clarity is this look back behavior. So I've asked there, why do we see so many dogs looking at their handlers repeatedly during a search? As we go up in the levels, if I'm judging masters and ultimate, I know that I'm going to see a lot of look backs. And it often happens in that time, as I was said before, and I'll show you another graphic, where the dog has no odor, where the dog is out in no man's land, and the dog goes, I'm not sure what you want here. And so what do? We start to interact with them. We recue them. We might move them along. So dogs looking back at their handlers repeatedly during a search is the most common example of unclear training. Looking back is them asking a question. It's them saying, I'm a bit confused here. Because if they knew their job, they'd be performing that beautiful search behavior to criteria. So they can ask lots of different questions, like, what the fuck are you doing? They can say, what the fuck should I be doing? What the fuck are we doing? See it all the time. But looking back is a sure sign that you've lost some clarity there for your dog. And why is it so common? Because it's reinforced. I just said it before. Every time that we respond to our dog in any way, actually will reinforce that look back behavior. So it's going to teach them to do it more and more. And just because it's a behavior on planet Earth, and the way that behaviors grow on this earth of ours is through reinforcement, we see it happening more and more and more. So you think about it, your dog's out there, he's doing his thing, he might have found one, he might have found two, and then he sort of starts to go, you know what, I can't find any more, or I don't know, I've searched for a bit, and I normally have found it by now, I don't know, but I'm just going to look at you. And you're thinking, okay, we need to get on. Okay, just go find it. Quick, go find it again. Okay, no worries. So the response that you give, and it doesn't have to be verbal, it can just be a hand gesture. Your dog is saying, I'm confused. You're saying, let me give you a suggestion. So that suggestion reinforces that look back behavior, which comes from that lack of clarity. Hope that makes a bit of sense. So it teaches them to focus more on you. So you think about it as they're asking a question. And if you're answering that question, you simply reinforce the question. It's like if I said to Vicky, hey, Vicky, I've lost my keys. Where are they? Can you help me find them? If she said, no, find them yourself, I'd go, okay, I'm not asking you again. If she said they're over there where you left them on the fridge, where you always use them, I'd probably leave them. I'd probably ask her again. So I know that's probably something that you haven't thought of before, but it is straight behavior 101. A behavior that's reinforced is going to grow more in the future. So if we go back to our little chain here and we focus on just this bit, because that's where I more often see it as happening, most dogs have had so much lovely understanding and clarity and positive reinforcement with finding source, that once they're in odor, they've got all the information that they need. They don't need you. It's when they're out here in this little area, or they're looking for odor still, is often when they start to ask the questions. So instead of just searching, that we introduce these extra look back behaviors into our search behavior chain. So if our dogs could answer the question, what is a good search behavior look like to you? They would say, well, you go in there and mum says, go find it, and you head on in there and you might find one, you might not. But if you look back, then she'll just tell you to go find it again. Or she might say, hey, go look over here. So I search and then I look back. I search and then I look back. And that's what a search is. And they would be right to think that, because that's what we've taught them to do. So why do people make such bad training decisions in scent work? It's really easy to make bad training decisions in scent work because the bloody dogs are so good at it. They come in and they take to it initially so naturally, right? You know, without any training. How many times have I judged novice and people have come and given me a nervous twitch again and said, you know, we've only been doing this for 5 weeks and he's already got these 4 qualities. He's so good at it. He's so natural. And it's like, oh my God, doesn't have any real foundation here, but they can do it naturally. You've got a dog that's comfortable in new environments and a dog that's a guts, then you're probably going to be able to get through novice and advanced pretty nicely. So that's a really strong reason. They just take to it. The other thing is not knowing how to train concepts and break behaviors down. I've been a trainer for 30 plus years, 30 plus years, dogs and cats and cockroaches on set and all sorts of stuff. So it's embedded in me to understand I have to break behavior down. But one of the joyful things about scent work is that people can come and play with their dog and they don't have to be a me. They don't have to really think too much about it because the dogs naturally take to it. But again, we've got to become better trainers as we move up the classes to ensure that we keep that clarity and that joy and enthusiasm on board. Why do we make such bad training decisions? Focusing on setting up searches and believing that success means finding all the hides. My friends, it's such a big one. It's so huge. If you could take nothing away from tonight and think to yourself, you know what? I understand that. I'm going to set out 4 hides and I'm just going to reinforce, I'm going to finish when my dog finds 2. I know that every single one of you might be feeling a bit twitchy about that, but you've got to again think, what's the dog learning from that training session? You want the dog to be desperate for you to ask him to search again because, oh my God, I could have done a 3rd, I could have done a 4th. That's really good training. And not understanding that we have to help, not understanding that if we have to help our dogs, it means there's a hole in our training. 100%. If your dog is asking you questions or if you feel like you have to do your dog's job for it, it's the craziest thing. They're the ones with this amazing nose who know if there's a hide, if the wind's going the right way, if there's a hide or a bit of food under the couch and they've just in the lounge room, it's been there for, I don't know, 2 weeks and they've just come through the kitchen door, wind's blowing straight into their nose. They just know 100%. They are so good at this, but we think we have to help them out. And I'm here to put the idea in your head that if you have to help your dog out, then it means that there's probably some clarity that you could improve in them so that they can get out there and use their nose and you can just go along for the ride. Nearly finished for some questions. So things to look out for that signal that your dog is confused. I've already talked about focusing on the handler, hopefully repeatedly. Hopefully you've got an idea of why that might be happening now. Regular false alerts. Dogs shouldn't be false alerting out there. Regularly not committing to found hides. That's often because they're trying to work a hide, and I see it quite a lot in my higher levels. A dog's trying to source a hide and trying to work out the puzzle, and if they're not really in the thick of odor and the handler hasn't picked up really that the dog's just started to catch a few odor molecules to draw them into that larger clump, then they're really apt, if they're trying to think for their dog, they're really apt to take their focus off their dog, look to where and think like a human, oh, I bet Oda's collecting over there, or I bet that Judge Peter Clark, she always puts a ground hide out. Where would she have put a ground hide here? So we think, and by taking our focus off the dog, we miss what they're telling us to do. So oftentimes dogs are trained not to commit it to hides or to odor, to follow to source, because we haven't been focused on them enough to know that they're just about to start one, so they learn that they can come off it. Whereas we obviously all want our dogs, if they catch odor, we want them to work their asses off to pinpoint source. We want them to be committed. Things that are obvious like shake off, yawning, scratches, 100%. Then you've got the two that are a little bit harder. Displacement sniffing, I'm going to tell you, is really common in scent work. If you and I went to an agility trial and we took a picnic and sat down and watched, we wouldn't need any kind of experience in observing behavior to know when the dog was displacement sniffing and when the dog was not, right? Because they're either jumping a jump or going through a tunnel or whatever, or the displacement sniffing. They're very overt, they're very different behaviors. But there's lots of displacement sniffing that goes on in scent work as well. But by God, is it a hard one to pick up on? And oftentimes it looks like I hear handlers say, oh, someone must have dropped something. No one's dropped something. It's just the dog just trying to have a smoko just to calm everything down while he sort of collects himself. So that displacement sniffing. And then we can get the dissociation, I've called it. Stopping and staring at nothing, stopping and staring. That's pretty obviously, I'm a dog that stopped working, but you can also get hyping up. So again, this is one where the dog looks like it's working because it's moving quickly around the search area, but it's not effectively searching in any way, shape, or form. So this is where we start to have to really be able to look at our dogs and understand them and know them as individuals, and what, again, that criteria, going right back to the start, that criteria of really of what we want our searching to look like for that dog. So again, just to take away, our focus really in training, remember going back to the beginning, and I said, for me, every training decision I make, the foundation is, am I building clarity and am I building motivation? Because every training decision I can make in scent work can be giving the dog more and more and more of that. But I can also make training decisions that takes away from that. So one of the really big things that I offer to you to think about is that when you set up a search for training, your focus should not be about finding all the hides. In training, especially, no one's going to come and give you a piece of paper that's going to go towards, your title. It should be about good training. It should be about building a quality of the search, because if you've got a dog that is so motivated and so clear on their job, if you've got a really amazing level of quality from those two things, you're going to find the hides if they're findable, no problem. As long as you've done all the other stuff like distractors, whatever level that you're up to. But if that quality of search isn't there because you've been focused on finding the hides and moving the dog around the search area to do it, you might find that your dog's not as clear on their job as you might like them or want them to be. All right. 15 minutes to go. We've got some questions.